Hi.
Hi.
Welcome.
Hello.
I'm going to talk to you about the LabVIEW Project Provider Framework. And since I put a awesome clickbaity title on the PowerPoint on the actual invite, I figured I might as well go with it.
Are you going to teach us one weird trick?
One weird trick. The one thing I does not want you to know about. So I know a lot of you in this room. I also don't know a lot of you in this room. So here's me. I'm Ladolcetta. I graduated from the University of Florida, and Gators is a big part of my life. So you see this as my icon on the forums. You see this kind of around me everywhere. I put that on there so you know who I am. I used to work for National Instruments up until 2 months ago. I've worked with the Tools Network for most of that time, and now I've moved over to the dark side, the light side, one of the other sides.
No, you left the dark side.
I left the dark side.
You left the ivory tower.
I'm now at Cirrus Logic doing LabVIEW app development for a large tool we have there. So it's cool to see both sides of the fence. You may know me on the forums as David L., and that's probably going to stick my name for a while until I get something more creative. So, LabVIEW Project Providers. Reason I'm talking about this, and the reason this is a thing, is because when I was part of the LabVIEW Tools Network, people wanted to do cool stuff with the project, LabVIEW project. And so the Project Provider Framework allows you to modify and manipulate this. You can add icons, you can add new objects to the project, you can do toolbars and all sorts of cool things, and I'm going to tell you all about them. What's that?
You don't need to.
Yeah, and I could do this, and then partners and customers said, we want to do this too, and so we kind of decided, hey, let's try to clean this up as best as possible and throw it out there and see what people do with it. So my first message to all of you is, don't listen to anything I had to say. Forget it. If you follow anything I tell you today, you will probably crash your computer, you might burn your house down, and you'll very much likely make Gandalf angry. So, don't do it.
Supported by
yeah.
What's that?
In the presentation that I gave at the CLA Summit on scripting, I said, stay away from project providers. Then Xnodes, that's just a mythical figure.
Forget it.
Yeah.
But seriously, this is not supported by NI. No one you talk to NI will help you with this. You could cause your LabVIEW to become unstable and freeze and crash. It is very difficult to understand the API because it was never meant to see public face, and it's very hard to debug. But that being said, it's really cool, and you can do a lot of cool things with it. So that's why I'll tell you with it, but use it at your own risk.
When I was in NI, I wrote some tools in the Project Provider as sort of a side project, and everything David just told you is correct. Add a bonus of we'll write something that absolutely should work by everything everything you see in the API, everything you understand about the way LabVIEW works, but you'll run into a different project provider and stuff won't work. Yep. Or you'll break another project provider.
Yep. Yep.
It's
fun.
Now I say this as somebody who that project provider that I wrote is really bloody awesome. It's one of the coolest things I've done in my life. I look forward to getting to do so again in the future, and here there be drag.
That's a good thing to bring to the next point. Who's used LabVIEW Project Providers before? Raise your hand. Okay, a few of you. Who's heard of project providers? A lot of you. And who wants to use them going forward?
No.
I have never been accused of rationality in this room.
Hey, that's okay.
But you can make some really cool stuff.
You can make some cool stuff. So, what can it do? What can you do with this framework? You can add little buttons to your toolbar in your project so that as you're developing, you can have quick access to different tools or functions or things like that. You can have drop-down tools, you can have buttons, whatever. When you press these buttons, it'll run your own custom piece of code or trigger other parts of the framework. You can add items to the tools menu. Now, a lot of you might say, hey, you can do this without project providers. The difference is, with project providers, you have much more customization of where the item goes in the tools menu, and you can then use it to trigger other parts of your project provider. So if you have other different functionality in the provider, you can trigger it from here.
You can also show the hide stuff as system
Exactly. It's just run a VI and that's it.
It automatically goes to your project context. I mean, you get tighter integration with what you're trying to do in your project.
Yep. Exactly.
Oh, so of course next gen, right?
Yeah. Oh, that's a good point. Nothing I say here has anything to do with next gen. So whatever you learn and create with the Project Provider Framework, throw it away as soon as you decide to go over to NXT or LabVIEW future thing.
Experiences at home, for the audience at home, I've written a very small one for recoloring class icons.
Who's this?
Christian Butcher, and then Matthias Baudot said, just heard Jack B saying that is horrible.
Yeah.
That's the experience.
It's so much fun.
You gotta like random adventure.
Yep. So you can add some icon overlays to your project. You can also change the icon completely if you want to. I'll show you some examples of how this is used creatively. You can do menu pop-ups, so if you right-click on an item in the project, you can add menu items to it, and these pop-ups are specific per the thing you click on. So you can filter by, if it's a VI, you get one set of things, and if it's a controller, you get another set of things, something like that. You can store properties of items. So you can store some metadata and save it to the project, or you can make it disposable data that gets thrown away. And I thought this was a funny metadata is data about data. So yeah, storing some properties and things like that. You can have functionality about, if you double click on an item, you can have it override what the LabVIEW does with it. So you could say, instead of opening up your VI front panel when you double click, you can actually make it open up your block diagram if you want.
Oh, look at you.
That's I'm so glad you caught that. As I put this on there, I was like, I wonder who's going to call me out. Thank you, Darren. But yeah, you can drag and drop behavior if you want, different fun things. Lots of cool stuff you can do with it. This one's cool. You can run code on project startup and shutdown, as well as LabVIEW startup and shutdown. We have a lot of people I've heard who say, like, hey, I want to run some code every time I open my project to whatever reason. Or when you close your project to, like, maybe check into Git or do some functionality. You can do that. You can run a unit test. Before you're allowed to leave for the day, you must run your tests. Be careful with this one, because this is where you can cause a lot of problems. If you run something that starts on project startup and then it doesn't work as you expect and it hangs, you'll never be able to see your project again. You'll never be able to open your project. Obviously, you can get out of it. There's ways to get around it, but
after you burn down your house.
Exactly. Just be careful with everything that happens. Any questions on? There's still more that you can do in this thing, but before we go on, Chris.
With all of your fantastic advice, I will never write one of these things. Has anybody already written a library of these things that we can go and pull?
A library of?
What are all the project providers?
There are lots of project providers out there that.
They ship with last year.
I will get to that.
They ship with a part of last year.
There's one in particular that I'm hoping is out there.
Give me 3 slides, and that's what we'll talk about. But before 3, any questions, thoughts? Anyone think of really cool things you can do with this, that you want to do with it? Okay. I'll show you a demo, because demos are fun. To show you what some of the basic functionality. It's nothing actually useful, but it's something to demonstrate kind of the behavior it does. Now, these demos, this demo I'm doing is actually the examples that exist on the community for project providers. So that's a good plug for if you do want to learn anything about this, or you need to use this, or you want support for this, all the documentation, everything is on the project provider community, which I'll give you a link to at the end of the presentation. So these examples are there, and the examples that you cannot see. So let's switch over screens. Oops. What am I doing? What have I done?
You have to reshare. You have a lot in there.
Can you see?
Perfect.
Okay.
Wrong screen.
Oh,
you're good. You're showing the process.
Yeah, but they're not.
Windows key will switch your video settings to duplicate.
Duplicate.
Close to extend. Yeah,
Duplicate.
You're good.
All right. So Okay, so I wrote a little provider that does some fun stuff. As you can see up here, there's some buttons in the toolbar. When you click on them, they run a pop-up. Obviously, that's not interesting, but you can imagine that pop-up can be anything else you want it to do. You can have different functionality for different buttons. I have tools menu items that are placed, down here. So again, with the framework, you have the ability to give it a weighting in terms of where it fits in the hierarchy of the tools menu.
It's a little bit of a mystery.
It's a mystery, but you can get it to figure out. Yeah?
So you have some buttons in a toolbar. Can you dynamically change what those buttons are while LabVIEW's running, or is it static while after LabVIEW?
That's a good question. I don't know that.
Okay, so once these
I don't know.
I don't know if this is part of your presentation, but the project provider portion that you write is simply an interface between the project and whatever tools you choose to write with scripting. Given that, you can write pretty much whatever you want.
It all depends on how much time and money you have.
I think if you're looking at some sort of dynamically swapping stuff in and out, that might not be the best thing, that might not be the best choice.
Well,
There may be a better way to do it. Way beyond that by writing a project. There may be a better way to do what you want to do, so you should have that conversation. Yeah. But if there's a good use case for being able to dynamically swap functionality, you can do it, I'm pretty sure.
I think you can, because I know for a fact that you can, so one of the examples in here is changing the right-click functionality. So if you right-click, you can add checkmark overlay, and it adds an overlay.
Hey!
And then now when you right-click it, remove checkmark overlay. So the menus are dynamic. You can change those, and I imagine if you can do that, you could probably also do the icons dynamically.
If you needed to launch a VI call by reference, sure.
Yeah.
You can do everything LabVIEW can do. What populates the thing with scripting? You can do anything with scripting in LabVIEW.
Including accidentally loading home software libraries and other applications.
Oh yeah, and that will cause massive performance issues, which is why they're dragging through.
Another thing to point out here is I right-clicked on the VI, and I got the thing that said add checkmark overlay, and now I'm right-clicking on a control, and it says add X overlay, just to show you that it's based off of what you're clicking on as opposed to for what's going to happen. So you can say you can add some
What did
object.
the control do to you? Why the other one got a check mark and this one got an X?
Because controls, it's not typed.
Different behavior, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's just choosing different behavior based on what it is. Fabulous, trying to be snarky.
Should be a class. Should be a class.
Yeah.
Can the right-click menu be determined based on the content of the file?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Parse it that fast?
It'll slow things down. So basically, the right-click won't show up until whatever VI runs. But if you have it read the file, open it up, look into it, and then you can parse it, yeah.
Those are the performance issues you'll see. It's like if your BI is adding into that pipeline, takes you 10 seconds to execute. You right-click and everything hanging for 10 seconds.
Yep.
Along those lines, if it is going to take a long time to load, you show a loading dialog.
You can do anything you want in a VI. It's just a VI that's running.
I would make that happen after you do the menu. Don't block the menu.
Just think, wait, he said he's never going to write one of these. So
Because I love adventure. I'm kind of giving you grief on this because I actually did have a lot of fun writing this.
It is a lot of fun. There's a lot of cool stuff you can do, but
Yeah.
it's also, you're going to bang your head against the wall. And when you want support and you want help for it, you're going to call people and they're going to just laugh in your face.
And when it works, you will feel like a freaking god.
You will.
they're not going to laugh in your face. They're going to ask you what?
Yeah, true. Support probably won't even know what you're talking about.
Yeah, it's going to take you 3 days to hear back. That's all for it.
Who owns this now at NI?
No one owns this. Anyway, so literally, when I was at NI, I was the only person in the company who would deal with anything on the Project Provider Framework and answer any questions. And now I've left the company. I'm still the only one answering questions on the
You and I need to go bowling.
I mean, it's fun, and I'm the only one. I want to help people, so I do it. But you're not going to get. In fact, the question actually came up today. Someone was like, "Hey, the documentation says refer to something .h file," and what that means is refer to the actual LabVIEW source code, the header file. That's where the documentation is. I don't have access to that.
You didn't take the LabVIEW source code we should?
Thought about it, but I didn't want to get legal. Yeah, Darren has access to that, so talk to him.
I've never opened a header file in my life.
He doesn't even know what they are.
Okay, so I know you guys want to get home to your family, so let's move on a little bit. What? Don't be sorry. This is fun. I'm having fun roasting LabVIEW as well. What do I do? Shift 5.
You can just share.
There we go.
Yeah, I'm gonna be meeting and sharing the other screen.
All right, I'll figure it out.
No, I did share in the demo sample. No?
No, the online one is showing the... Okay. So, clicking... Vocabulary time. Everything I just showed you is what's called a secondary provider. There are two types of project providers, secondary and primary. Secondary is something that acts upon something that's already in the project. So if you have a VI in the project and you add an overlay to it, that's a secondary provider. What a primary provider is putting new items into the project. So on top of editing what's already there, you can add new stuff. And this is where things can get really, really cool because things like if you've ever seen LabVIEW Goop, you can add, well, Goop is already just classes.
Unit test framework?
Unit test framework. You can add tests to your project that are specifically just test objects, and they're not actually VIs or classes or whatever. They're a completely separate thing that LabVIEW doesn't know how to deal with, but you can have special functionality in the project for it. So there's an example here of just like some dummy item. It's nothing. It's not an existent thing, but you can have its own icon. You can have its own functionality, and it has its own presence in the project.
How old is this slide?
How old is this slide?
You're missing the word accurate.
So I gave this presentation in, I think, 2011 at the CLA Summit, and I didn't change any of the screenshots, so my bad.
There's several things to see from there.
I'll be honest, I put minimal amount of effort into this.
See, this is what we get when somebody requests a topic.
Who requested this, by the way? Is that you? Okay, good job. So you can customize icons and names. You can add to the source or the build specifications. This is where primary providers is the coolest, and I think we're the most powerful. You can add new build specifications. Something that I've wanted for years is a VI package build specification. So I can build a package from within my project. You can do that with project providers. You can do that with project providers. I don't have time for that. It hasn't happened yet.
Yeah, I think JKI can pay me for that.
We requested to JKI, like, hey, can you do this?
Wouldn't it be great?
It will cost, yeah, we can do that. It's software, right? How much money do you have? So that's where it's really cool. And of course, you can call like a wizard or dialog because it adds an actual entry into the new. So when you right click and say new whatever, you have your own new object, and you can call a wizard or a dialog and configure whatever thing is in the project. Pretty cool. One big thing is so a new item type is actually registered in LabVIEW when you add something in here. So now that I have a dummy object, it's given a GUID of some sort, some identifier. Now you can create a secondary project provider to act upon the primary project, the new object that you've created. So an important thing about this is secondary providers are required to attach, or in order to do this functionality, and this is the line I was thinking, they're mostly a primary provider is mostly useless without a secondary provider. And my wife wanted me to let you know that this is a good metaphor for our relationship. I'm the primary provider in the household, but I'm mostly useless without her. So.
and you can filter if the thing being provided is a new object, i.e. a kid. The primary provider is essential, the mom, but she really needs the data.
Yeah. No, but so like the primary provider just is there to create the object and add it to the project. The secondary is what's adding the right-click functionality, the buttons, the icons, and stuff like that. So they usually they always go hand in hand for that. Cool.
It's probably more likely to write a secondary, just because.
Yes, most likely you're going to write a secondary provider because what else? There's not a lot of options to add to a project, really.
The you want access to the new menu, that's the only place to get it.
How do I get this? How do I?
Windows PP,
Windows what?
Windows P.
P. That's the one.
Project.
Project.
So in your example, though, like a new primary, I already forgot the word, provider, would be like the VIPB build spec.
Yep.
That would be a primary provider.
Correct.
But you would have like a secondary provider, like when you right-click.
Which actually does all the functionality behind it of right-clicking it.
Or like when you right-click build specifications, new VIPB.
Well, the new part, the right-click new, is the primary part. And creating and instantiating that, so the wizard that goes along with it. Let me just show you.
So you have your VI package, but you wouldn't be able to do anything with your .vi package.
Oh yeah, I figured the item in the project under build spec.
Yeah, primary? That's the primary.
Okay.
The thing that makes the thing that adds to the build spec is the primary provider.
So I've created a new thing called
Watch.
an HTML. And I've had to be able to add HTML to the project. So this now exists in here. When I click on it, no, that's not what I think I pushed the wrong button. New HTML. So this is a VI I've created. This is how you configure it. You can
Lovely.
take whatever settings you want. This said 7 years ago. It configures it. It takes it all things and it creates and it adds it to the project. So once you click, let's just whatever.
There's a really cool question on this.
We name it this. And now we have an HTML item called ni.com. That's where the project provider ends. Now, if I want to double-click on this thing, I get new functionality on double-click. That's the secondary provider telling me what happens on double-click. You can view whatever. This is the actual example is not really helpful, but the right-click and there's an item to view here. So that is the secondary provider. Adding, I think the icon is part of the primary, but basically the point is there's two parts to it, and you kind of need both. What was the hard question?
Really? So Sam is saying, for example, if we ever actually get interfaces, we are already starting with an if, big if, then there will be a primary provider for that, right? So that then you get a separate GUID and then a separate secondary provider, so you get different right-click options. Am I understanding that correctly?
That is one way it could be done. Most likely, NI would probably do well. Yeah, it would probably be a project provider to
Yeah, but it would probably be a P provider.
Yeah, it might be.
They would do that with C code.
Yeah, I guess that's a good kind of thing to note that this is all G code that's working. It's called a G provider. There's also a thing called a C provider or whatever that's only available if you have access to the LabVIEW source code. So you guys can't even think about doing this.
Think about how glad I don't have to.
Yeah. Hopefully that's a little bit, nicer.
So yeah, that's a good point. When you right-click in the project, like, most of the things you see in your menu are,
Right.
like, there's G providers sticking things here and there.
Right.
That's like, most of that stuff is just.
Now, that being said, okay.
The source code. The source code is supported.
Sam said he got it.
Yeah. So that's a cool segue. There are already some existing NI project providers that you've seen before. You may just never heard the name project provider before. So let me show you what those are. Funny pick from the internet. Okay. If you missed it, you missed it. So build specifications. The entire build specification thing, app builder, everything is all G code. It's all a G project provider that has been created to add something to make an executable on a zip file and everything else. So that's cool. That's one example of how project providers could be used. Create a thing in there, have the dialogue the create new exe dialogue, do whatever you need to do.
So Sam is getting excited here. Does that mean that we can edit the build spec project provider?
If you know the passwords to the build spec project provider, yes, you can.
You don't want to.
You don't want to?
You don't want to touch it. Yeah, because then you'll become the new owner of that builder.
That's the R&D rule. If you last person to touch it.
More than 6 weeks until they fit you with a jacket with really long arms.
So, if you somehow found a way to crack through the passwords and get to it, yes, you
So
can.
stay with the project API to
Yeah,
touch that one.
I would recommend. Source code control is the built-in source code control is all G providers that adding overlays and syncing into Perforce or whatever other things are being synced into. That's the only two I can think of that are NI providers. There's probably, oh, the active framework stuff now. Sorry, that thing. Sorry, this was in 2011, this presentation.
Active framework was not even a thought in the
The community release was in 2011, we had no tool.
Yeah, I need to update those for modern times.
The BI analyzer also has.
Yes, it does. It does.
Unit test framework?
Unit test.
Is that C?
Unit test framework. I'm not sure. I think it
Probably
might be.
is because it's not finished.
Moving right along.
If for those of you who are interested in seeing an example, an extensive example of how this is done, the LAF Project Provider it's actually like 3 providers, I think, when it's all done, because it's different kinds of functionality that needs to break it up. But almost all of that code is not password protected. There are a couple of places where some reserved functions, 3 places where the functionality has some sort of NI stuff in it. Almost everything else, pretty much everything else is exposed. You can look at it. Great place to go looking for how a function runs. And it's not the source code control one is just I've seen it. It's crazy. The AF looks pretty straightforward. The scripting code's also there, so you can look at how to script. It's a good place to look at how to script VIs templates.
So Eric says that VI Analyzer and UTF are both providers.
Thanks, Eric.
So 5. You have 5.
It's 5. I'll update it. Go ahead.
I think I know the answer already, but these project providers don't have any feature in NXG?
No. Well, there will be some other technology to do similar functionality, but it's going to be completely
That's your understanding as of your...
Right now, NXG can be extended only with C.
C#.
C#.
Yeah.
Not yet. Talk to your marketing contact. Tell them what you want.
Do we have any marketing people in the room?
Yeah.
Oh!
So, right under the button.
Yeah, so right now you can only extend NXG with C#. So if you're willing to hire C# developers and learn C#, you can do extensions for NXG.
And that is not acceptable to C programmers.
And oh, by the way, the
Sorry, I didn't mean to
API
actually
is not
say
open. So anyway.
As a former marketing person. Okay.
I heard a squeak from the back of the room.
So I mentioned before, a few of these things already have been created by the community and exist for you to go and use. They are the ones that I'm going to talk about are on the LabVIEW Tools Network. There's probably other ones that are elsewhere. Like I said, this was part of my presentation when I was part of the Tools Network, so it's very centered about that.
That's not an NI product. 6.
You're right. I did change this slide because it used to be in Devo Goop, and then it was changed to Symbio Goop, and now it's NI Goop. The Goop toolkit is a giant project provider. It was not written by NI. It was written by this other company, and we bought it because it was that great. So it's got ways to change the usability of OO. I haven't used it a whole lot, so I don't know a lot to say on it, but people think it's cool. But, yeah, more importantly, it's an example of how project providers are used. G#
and
is
GDS, the GDS toolkit, there's OpenGDS, which is
community-driven.
the community-driven one. It's on GitHub, and you can download, fork it, and contribute to it, and eventually get pulled into the NI GDS.
Yep. G# is a similar one to that. It's object-oriented, adds new object types to the project. SEA localization toolkit is one that you can translate, localize different VIs in your project. So you can right-click on an item and say add localization to it. And there's a little icon that says what's been localized or not. This is the one I do use every day or a lot. Is the SVN toolkit. It's so you can check in and check out code from Tortoise SVN from your project.
You're still using the version?
Not my fault. I came to a company that was using this version. Don't blame me. Yeah. That's beside the point.
It's equally bad.
If you use SVN, it's a really cool toolkit to help your SVN development. Fun part.
Yeah, that's true.
And it's not bad for what it is.
Yeah. So I don't want to go too much into the technical details, but I will kind of introduce some of what it takes to create a project provider. This is, I don't know, it looked like a matrix to me. It was kind of, I don't know.
It takes nerves of.
Yeah. So there's four.
Or blinding.
There's four main components of creating a project provider. There's the INI file, there's interface VIs, there's method VIs, and then there's the project provider API at the bottom. So first is this INI file. That's the very first thing that LabVIEW reads when it starts up. It determines, it tells you what items are supported by this project provider. It tells you what interface VI, or what interfaces, it points to these interface VIs, which we'll talk about next. There's a couple lines that don't mean anything, license name and interface version. Whatever you change those to, don't change them, leave them there.
Oh, yeah. There are places in the API where it's like, you put this here.
Yeah, don't ask questions, just do it.
We don't know why. We don't know why.
Yeah.
But you better put it there or it won't work.
Big important thing though here is a signature. In order for LabVIEW to recognize that it's a valid project provider, it has to be signed. So that way no one can just go in and manipulate things that are already there. However, the signer tool is available on the community if you're making your own. So use at your own risk. Do what you want with it. But the point is, in order to create your own one of these, you have to sign this INI file. And Darren's looking at me, yes, I did get permission to post it publicly on the internet, so we're good.
Nobody should ever use these.
Yeah, that's true. But yeah, so you make this INI file, you sign it, and then you put it in a certain folder in the LabVIEW directory. The next thing is, so it's pointing to these things, these interface VIs. These interface VIs are just another kind of pointer tool to point to some of the method VIs, but this actually defines what methods are available on that provider. So within the item interface, item means an item in the project. So if the item on pop-up menu means when you right-click on an item, this is the code that's going to run. So it'll run this VI that's located in a certain folder in your directory. On command is when you click on that item in the pop-up menu. And then there's a list of all the, there's probably like 50 or so of these that are possible. It's all in the documentation of what are the different interface VIs that you can use.
I know you don't know anymore, but I had a studying challenge, and I think it was with the primary, where a couple of them are required, but nowhere does it say drop them. So you get to figure that out on your own.
Yeah, another fun one too is with these method VIs, you have to have a certain input and output structure on the what's it called, the connector pane. But again, that we didn't document that for some reason, what it's supposed to look like. So you kind of have to guess or copy something that already exists and do all that stuff. But anyways, this is the actual functionality that runs when something happens. So this one is the can drag to project window VI. It has an object. This is the object that you're actually referring to. This is the drop target that you're dropping on. And then this is the output, which is, are you able to drag it? Did it fail or succeed? And everything else that happens in there is up to you, what you want to do with it. Yeah.
So there's this one VR where you're taking a U64 and casting it to a reference.
Yeah, that's the API. That's next. So we're on level 3.
It's not a U64, it's called a blue wire.
Yeah. So one of the caveats.
Project providers are going to talk about blue wires, and that's what they're talking about.
One of the caveats that I will get to in a little bit is that the API uses 4 different types of references to refer to the project items. There's this blue wire. There's this cluster called a NIM, like the secret of NIM. There's actual VI server references, and there's a string, which is just an ID. And so there's 4 different ways, and different API, so the next one is the API VIs, and different API VIs use different forms of this reference. I told you, this was never supposed to see the light of day, and it's because of me that it did, so I'm sorry to the world. But the API VIs are what ship with LabVIEW, and they're actually the functionality that you can use to invoke some of the underlying framework stuff. So you can set an icon overlay. This API will set an icon overlay. Given an item and given some state, it will set that overlay to that state. set menu sets the menu items. There's like 150 different VIs in these 2 folders that you can use. Some of them have documentation in terms of a comment in the description. Some don't. So your mileage may vary.
This is the occult. There's dabbling in the occult.
Yeah.
You'll hear people say, voodoo,
Yeah.
here you go.
So that's how you create a project provider. Again, all of this is documented in the 2011 version of David, who documented this stuff. So the best of my abilities at the time. But this is kind of just to give you an idea of what it is, and if you really want to do this, you can read through that later. So just an overview, you have the INI file, which points to the interface VIs. The interface VIs point to the interface method VIs, and then the method VI is actually called the API method.
What exactly are those interface VIs? Because I guess like method VIs are kind of like the abilities.
Yeah, the interface. So that's a good point. I didn't touch on this. There's different interface types, which is global interface, item interface, and create new wizard interface, and there's I think another one. But this is the type of things you can do. So item is an item in the project. So this is acting on an item.
Okay.
The global is an item in the toolbar because it's global to the whole project, and it's not specific. The create new wizard, I think that's if you have a primary provider, you're using this. So basically, it's just again, it's those pointers to the other VIs. It's like a collection. What's that?
Defining your callback.
Yeah, it's what defines the callback VIs. It's a definition.
Yeah, these are the available. So the entirety of the interface VIs are these. This is every action you can possibly take on an object in the project.
Right.
And what do you want to happen to your object in the project when this action happens? And so like on click or on command, when you double click on the item that you're creating this project provider for, then when that happens, run this interface method VI, then, and in that method VI, kind of probably assumes you're going to use the API VIs. You don't have to.
Okay.
Yeah, you don't have to.
Yeah.
You know, if you double click it, it could just be a pop-up like, no, you can't open this.
The idea is it's just defining, it's telling the framework, hey, here's where you need to look when this action happens.
And you want to look at a lot of these, so on command is when you actually resolve the thing you want to do. That can take as long as you take. But they'll be like on pop-up menu, should resolve quickly, because that gives you
Expected right action.
Yeah. So think of it like in an event structure, where you've got the, panel close, question mark. Am I checking to see the panel closes? You don't want that to take forever. That needs to resolve faster, probably 250 milliseconds is your upper limit. You want to resolve faster than Q where it's changing. But then you have the on-panel close event, which is the thing that you do when you panel close it. And you can discard, and on-panel question marks, you can just kind of discard it, which is where those APIs come.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So that's just.
I'm showing for you as best I can.
No, you're doing good. I really want to get to this slide because this is the most important slide of this whole presentation.
You're going to show a big dragon, right?
The caveats of what to think about when doing this. So first of all, project providers need to be developed in place. In order for them to work, they need to exist under the LabVIEW /resource/framework/providers directory. If it's not there, then it doesn't work. So that can be a problem if you're using source code control or installing packages or whatever. You have to do that in there. It's just something you have to deal with. I knew there was, I did speak to some people, maybe it was Jack Dunaway or someone who was created some tools in which you could like dupe the system into thinking you are underneath LabVIEW, but you're actually in a different folder, and it was kind of gross.
That sounds like Jack.
Yeah. Yeah.
Links or something, like file system, directory links, all those places.
If you really want to hear how bad project providers are, talk to Jack Dunaway, because he dove so deep into the framework when developing his deploy tool, and it just burned him inside and out.
and that started different from
Yeah, and then he disappeared off the face of the earth.
I told you, man. Hoodoo. Every now and again, your friends on the other side decide it's time to collect.
Yeah.
Six-layer hell.
Anytime you make a change to any of the VIs in the framework, you have to restart LabVIEW because they're loaded on LabVIEW startup. So actually, because of this, we added this restart app method just for the sake of project providers. So you can easily just restart LabVIEW without having to shut it off and then start it up again. So I actually have this node inside of a VI in my tools menu at all times.
In a project provider.
It's not a project provider folder, because it's easier. But when developing, you make some changes, you have to restart it and then test it. And if it doesn't work, then you have to restart it and test it. And if you make a breaking change that like freezes LabVIEW or whatever, you have to shut down LabVIEW, remove the INI file from the certain directory, then start LabVIEW up again with no concept of the provider. So, everyone in NI, just close your eyes and don't pay attention to this. VIs run in a different context, and therefore, in order for your debugging tools to work, you need to have special functionality to super secret nodes that don't exist in real life and you've never seen them before. That's why they're brown. If you don't know how to get, does anyone not know about super secret
So
VIs?
just do a search for super secret LabVIEW INI token,
Yeah,
and you'll find what it is.
exactly. If you add this super secret token to your LabVIEW, you'll get some additional untested nodes that don't actually exist, and I didn't tell you about them. But you'll need this in order for your debug tools to work with the provider context. Yeah.
You'll help to point out, if you do enable these super secret type special things, make sure you don't distribute them in unprotected block diagrams, because when you use them, you see them as brown.
Yeah.
The user who does not have a super
Secret.
INI token enabled,
Yeah.
they will see them as a normal yellow node, and they can wreak havoc, but they can copy paste them anywhere they want without that INI token.
Right.
So you can enable people to do serious damage without knowledge.
With great power comes great responsibility. So be careful.
Don't pass
Yeah.
the trinkets out.
A big one is Desktop Execution Trace Toolkit. In order to actually trace this tool, you need a special token, which I documented in that link there. But you need a special INI token in order to enable the provider context in your debug tool. Otherwise, you can't actually see them, because all the VIs that are running in a secret background context that we don't want you to know about unless you're doing this debugging stuff. So it does not. It runs in its own. It runs in this NI/LAV MXLV provider thread. Yeah, yeah. It's a different. This is one of the biggest. This is one of the main reasons why it's such a problematic thing, is because it's doing stuff in the background that's running in different ways that you're not expecting.
Well, this is why we had the performance issue with Reactor Framework, because it was loading the entire class library of Reactor Framework stuff, or it wasn't necessarily Reactor Framework stuff, it was just the library you right clicked on got loaded in this other instance. Right, whatever.
Yeah.
So if you don't understand LabVIEW application context, start your project provider. You will understand. And you will understand why I refer to these challenges as outside context problems. Yeah. If you've read your Ian Banks.
So I mentioned the API item references are crazy. There's 4 different ways that the API refers to things, and you have to use different VIs to like convert between the two, and it's kind of a nuisance. So think about that while you're developing them. The last caveat is this guy did most of the documentation and examples, and that's actually incorrect. This guy, in 2011, did all the examples. He was younger, dumber, and had a lot more hair.
And look at this, and understand that it's a little cave project from
The reason for much of this hair loss is definitely the stress of project providers. So the point of this is I'm just an engineer who was in marketing. At the time, I didn't know, I'm not a tech writer, I wasn't the developer of the APIs, and so it's really kind of patchy, hit or miss, so just be careful.
Well, you had to catch up on stuff that was pretty mysterious.
Yeah, yeah.
And we have this at all.
And this
Right.
is why,
And that it is actually usable,
Yeah.
even given the challenges. You did a really nice job of getting this out there.
and this is why unit tests are great, because if there were unit tests, at least we would have
Yeah.
some running code to figure out what.
We tried to do the test for the AF project provider.
So,
Outside context problem.
so go back to your caveat slide. Did you?
You want new David or old David?
Okay, there's a community for project provider development, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
On that community, is there any information about the run at any root right-click option for VX server optics?
No,
Okay,
I don't know anything about that.
that's like
the biggest freaking caveat about this whole concept is if you have in your provider any OpenVI reference, property node, or invoke node, which you will have hundreds of, there is a hidden right-click option on those three things that you have to enable with an I9 token called Run at Any Loop. And when you right-click on one of those three objects, you see the menu option and right-click, and you check it. And if you have not checked that menu option on every one of the hundreds of OpenVI reference, property node, and invoke project provider, there is a small chance, but a non-zero chance, that OpenVI reference, property node, or invoke node will randomly hang all the LabVIEW when it executes at some random time in your project provider runs.
Run away, run away.
I have personally had to go through every VI in the VI Analyzer project provider
And right-click.
right-click on every one of them and choose. At the time I did this, that property was not exposed to scripting. It is now.
What's the code?
Show run at any loop menu item equals true.
Darren,
Stupid thing like
in
that.
all
But the
seriousness,
point is, this is just another one of the million reasons
is it?
why these are fun. We don't know. These project providers are fun and exciting, but like, don't make it part of your day job. Is the takeaway that I'm going to continue.
And this is why the QMH tools are on the tools menu. If anybody wants them on the project,
Nope.
if they pay us, maybe.
In all seriousness, if you have time and want to, ghostwrite that piece of information. And I know you don't want to take credit for it, but send it to me and I'll post it on the community.
And whenever you right-click and pick this option on your property nodes, invoke nodes, and open references, they turn brown.
Oh, okay, cool.
So,
I feel like that would be handy, but I don't know anything about it enough to document it, so.
Something like that.
Yeah.
well, that's exactly.
No, you do a search on Google and I'm sure you're going to find it.
Okay, so, the last little bit, here we go. Where do we go? Quiz time, it's quiz time. Where do you go for more help? Do you go to NI Support and R&D?
Nope.
No. Do you go to the LabVIEW Tools Network?
No.
Absolutely not. They will yell at you. They'll yell at me for telling you that. You talk to me?
Yeah!
Do you invoke your friends on the other side?
You go to the forums. Yes, that's where you go, and just be prepared that the only person who actively monitors this is that guy in the third bullet. So I might end up, whatever, doing my best to help because I'm a nice guy. But yeah, it's a hard thing. It's not supported, so use at your best will. So that's it. I'll post this, obviously. That's the link to the forum, the project providers. If you ever want to get in touch with me, not involving project provider, you could do it that way. Anything else that you guys want to pick apart about project providers?
So did that answer your question?
I have more questions. This is dumb.
So there were times, in case of this, project providers. There were times I beat my head against the wall. And there were times in functionality that should have worked and was really cool, didn't work out because another project provider was not involved somehow and didn't think that was more important. So it changed it. You will run into these things. We'll have some unexpected things that make your project go long. And when you make your stuff work, you realize that it changed the LabVIEW. You made it change the LabVIEw.
Yeah.
I did that. I mean, I don't know if there's a handwriting of my daughter probably. I don't know. I called her in. I was like, look at this, sweetie. Like, look at that.
And she said, whatever, Dad, you interrupted Minecraft for this?
No, she went, oh, that's cool, Dad, and then went off to do her thing. But, my daughter's like, so, it's...
Yeah. It's cool. It's fun. It's powerful. It's neat.
And the most likely use that bus are going to have is when a customer says, I want to. And then you explain to them that, you know, the rest of it, get really nice and
they're third-party ones, even if you install them from the LabVIEW Tools network, may have bugs, and it may look like LabVIEW is crashing, because LabVIEW is crashing, and it's not because LabVIEW is crashing, it's because your project provider is crashing LabVIEW.
Right, like, the viewpoint toolkit, actually,
There was a big,
there was
big
a
issue with that.
period of time that it was making, LabVIEW crash.
I'm not going to discuss specific
Is it working?
scenarios.
Yeah.
Our project providers will crash LabVIEW
Yep.
sporadically.
There were a few in the AF project providers that always wound up, they wound up being, we were dragging a class across this happy area. Wow, that's amazing stuff. That was just interesting. It'll do that outside the project provider.
Yeah.
That'll crash you outside the project provider.
Huh.
So, and because all your stuff is buried in a project provider, when something blows up,
You can't tell. There's nothing notifying you. Then that's why I say with the debug tools, like if you add that context to your debug tool, whatever you use to debug to kill VIs or see what's running or whatever, like in order to see what's actually running, you need to get that context, and then that might help you a little bit.
we'll understand context, which is honestly, as an exercise, knowing, if you do any scripting, understanding context.
There's other exercises that can provide a lot more. All right, guys, so, any suggestions for other topics for the following meetings? Any volunteers for presenting? No?
Is the next meeting posted early?
Next meeting is, I'll tell you. 9 o'clock.
Relative multiple black magic.
Yeah, it's right.
X nodes and then.
I have not, I never had a chance to next one.
Xnode goes beneath, project providers.
Way
Project
beneath or like.
Project providers are at least acknowledged. Xnodes are a mythical feature.
Can't you can easily make it, tools.
Yeah.
Well, even those tools aren't used.
Well, Chris Mater.
But like providers, Xnodes are so cool if you know how to do them right. You can do some really cool stuff.
Xnode is like, how many possible ways are there to modify an Xnode? How many places in the, it's a handful.
Absolutely, yeah. Okay, so, where's that, Burroughs and I?
And you're,
I never had
Oh, no, we were at least given permission to document the project provider. When we went to R&D and said, can we do Xnodes, they said, absolutely not. We don't even want to support this for our own internal things, much less everybody else.
well, like I said, Stephen at CLA Summit, he was like, he let me talk about project providers, but then on Xnodes, he was like, it's a mythical animal. It doesn't exist.
So, but they're cool. Cool. Well, thank you
All right.
guys.
Thank you.
Were you not entertained? No, I
was afraid to click, but I clicked.
clicked what? Oh, yeah. The clickbait.
Did you exit it?
I don't know.
Yeah.
Did I?
I don't know.
Pro features expires in 13 days. I don't want pro features.